Welcome back. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo caught in a cover-up this week after his own attorney general admitted that coronavirus nursing home deaths in New York were undercounted by as much as 50%. Here's what the governor said about it on Friday.
A third of all deaths in this nation are from nursing homes. New York State, we're only about 28% only. But we're below the national average in number of deaths in nursing homes. But who cares? 33, 28, died in a hospital, died in a nursing home. They died.
Congressman Lee Zeldin represents New York's 1st Congressional District. He joins me now. Good morning, Congressman. Thanks very much for being here. I don't know really quite what to say. What is your reaction to what you just heard from Governor Cuomo?
Whenever you hear him say that, who cares, every time that video is played, I think of the family that lost a loved one, mom or dad, grandma, grandpa. And I don't look at this story as being about data, statistics, numbers. This is a cover-up. And it's a cover-up of a policy that ended up resulting in that grandmother, grandfather losing their lives. Early on, this is towards the end of March of 2020, New York State ordered these nursing homes to take in infected patients and place them with healthy residents. And then it spread like wildfire, which is even a term that Governor Cuomo has used, and then they covered it up. And we're seeing more get exposed this past week after this AG's report came out in New York State. But now the families, they want even more. They want to know more about who who was involved in this originally, and also who was involved in covering up the numbers as the timeline moved forward in the weeks and months that followed. And they want not just more information and transparency, they also want accountability. I mean, this is criminal what happened.
Yeah. What is your reaction to now we understand Joe Biden is considering Andrew Cuomo to become the Attorney General? There's that, and his executive orders seem to be positive for some of our enemies. I mean, canceling the XL pipeline certainly is a give to other players in the Middle East. The oil production will happen. It just won't happen on American land. What's your take on the Biden executive orders with regard to its impact on the Middle East, the Abraham Accords, all of the progress that President Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had in terms of normalized relations with Israel?
Some of these early decisions on the executive orders included, as you just pointed out, canceling the Keystone XL pipeline, and the America's pursuit of energy independence gets harmed by something like that executive order. Of course, there's the loss of jobs, which is hugely important to take note of, lives that get impacted adversely that way. And then there's that reliance on foreign countries, the national security impact, also the impact of stopping construction of the border wall. And those examples where you're talking about homeland security, you're talking about domestic decisions made for domestic politics, but they have implications abroad. But also, with regards to what you asked, the personnel decisions that get made, putting people in positions who were architects of the Iran nuclear deal, people who may be tripping over themselves to re-enter it as is, or have pro-Palestinian leanings, anti-Israel feelings, where once again, like the Obama administration was doing, we might start treating Israel like Iran and Iran like Israel, which fortunately for the last 4 years we had reversed. We'll see where it goes from here.
You are a veteran. You are in the reserves. I want to ask you about the National Guard. Going to have permanent security fencing around the U.S. Capitol. So this whole idea of domestic terrorists, which Devin Nunes and Kash Patel just mentioned, feels real when you've got barbed wire and the National Guard protecting the Capitol. And this is going to go on until March, mid-March.
At this point, it feels like it's about props, politics, and power. There's a narrative that Democrats want to push about January 6th and it representing 75 million voters of Donald Trump. What happened inside of the Capitol, you see Democrats trying to leverage that to be representative of something much greater than that. I mean, this is the same party that every 2 years when there's House races, they'll call opponents white supremacists, extremists, Nazis. They have no problem with that labeling. And here they want people to ask themselves, well, why is there still barbed wire around the Capitol? And they could say, well, let me tell you about all the people who voted for Donald Trump and what happened inside the Capitol on January 6th. That's what I think it's about.
Yeah. By the way, there are no term limits for Governor Cuomo, right? I mean, if he doesn't take the AG job, he's on a short list, we know that. But what about him as governor? There are no term limits.
I think that much of New York State is done with Andrew Cuomo, and he's up for re-election again in 2022. We don't have term limits in New York statutorily. However, we do have term limits when New Yorkers go to the ballot box. They don't have to keep re-electing him. This is someone who he'd be going for his 4th term, and there's a certain amount of arrogance as if his tough work is done. Now it's about collecting Emmys and writing books. He's not talking about restoring freedoms. He's not talking about cutting taxes. He's not talking about public safety. Instead, they're going the other way with cashless bail. And then you see the defund the police movement in New York City. So hopefully New Yorkers take action and save our state next November, 2022.
Well, they are talking about getting that SALT deduction back in place, though. Chuck Schumer making that official last week, right? Real quick, we got to jump, Congressman.
Yeah, we have to keep in mind that the SALT deduction, SALT stands for state and local taxes. Andrew Cuomo likes to talk about the federal government fully restoring the SALT deduction, and that's fine. That would help my constituents in many respects, but he needs to do his part because the reason why our deduction was so high is because our state and local taxes are so high. Once again, Andrew Cuomo looking to blame the feds for something he could take responsibility for.
All right, Congressman, we'll keep watching this. Thanks very much for weighing in this morning. We'll see you soon.